Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lacy Johnson's podcast. Uh, Reminding you to go out and like this podcast, subscribe to the podcast, hit the notification bell so you can get notified of any time new content is dropped. Also, I would love to hear your comments, any criticism, any agreement, anything you have to say, really, as long as the FCC is fine with what you're saying. I'm fine with what you're saying. We don't do censorship here. We welcome all points of view, uh, all kinds of ideas here. So uh, give me your comments. Feel free to do that. And also the online store where we have merchandise for sale. Now, what we've been doing this month is focusing on voices that you very seldom hear in the mainstream media. And look, let's be honest, the voices that you very seldom hear are from conservative black uh, voices. You don't hear those voices in the mainstream media because it's not consistent. This is just my opinion, the way I look at it. It's not consistent with the narrative about how racist America is and how much we black people are victims and things like that. I've just never bought into that narrative, and I guess I'm conservative. You can consider me conservative, even though I don't like labels, because anytime you label something, you separate it from something else. And I'll just paraphrase the U.S. Supreme Court in the Brown versus Education ruling, where it outlawed public segregation, where it says that separate inherently is not equal. And so anytime we start labeling people, separating them, we're going to come to a point where one group is going to think they're better than another group, and it's going to lead to issues. I like to use the example, if you're talking about hair colors, sooner or later it's just a matter of time before someone says blondes have more fun. And when you start looking at people, it's just a matter of time before we start talking about who's smarter, who's better, and stuff like that. So I tend to want to stay away from that. And so I brought you some opinions of someone I think who's ordinarily considered liberal in their viewpoint, Morgan Freeman, where his perspective on Black History Month uh, coincided with my perspective. His perspective on racism coincided with my perspective. And specifically, what I'm talking about, once again, labeling, separating people. I think we need to come together. I think, first and foremost, as a country, I'm very concerned about this division and how and people there are global forces, I think, who is behind a lot of the division in our country, liberal versus conservative, black versus white, any type of division. It's the old divide and conquer by the people with the money and the power. So I don't even like that. But the bottom line is this: Morgan Freeman indicated that let's just stop talking about race and stop looking at people in terms of their groups and race and stuff like that, and look at people as individuals. I shared with you that I don't know whether I was born that way or not, but I've never looked at people as a group. I looked at everybody I've met in my life. I've looked at as individuals, and perhaps even more, I normally can see a piece of me in everybody, the humanity in everybody that I meet. And we all got flaws and we all got our issues and things, and we all got our history. But I see a part of me in everybody that I meet. And people find it kind of strange. I don't know why a Christian would consider it strange, but when I say I don't remember disliking anybody in my life, uh, because really to dislike someone to me means, at least the way I look at it, you must think you're better than that person. And I've just never walked around with that. So we did have Morgan Freeman talking about Black History Month. He's against it. He gave his reasons. I encourage you to go back and watch last week's episode. He also talked about racism, and we stopped looking at each other as members of a group and as individuals. So that's one of the things. Now, let's get into today's program. Well, first of all, I hope all of you had a chance to take in the Super Bowl. I understand if you didn't. My team won. I'm a big Kansas City Chiefs fan. Actually, I'm a big Patrick Mahomes fan. I just love to see talent, and a lot of people are saying he's the best, most talented football player they've ever seen. And I'm not totally against going that route, even though, as an old school guy, I watched Jim Brown play for the Cleveland Browns growing up. And if you've ever seen Jim Brown play football, if you grew up during that era, he should be the logo of the NFL, just like Jerry West is the logo of the NBA. And I know we're not going to get into that. We'll talk about that another day. Jim Brown should be, like I said, the logo for the NFL. Having said all of that, Patrick Mahomes, I think, is great. Uh, there was a poll, by the way, which one modern poll recently, which came out with Jerry Rice, the wide receiver, being the number one football player of all time, and Jim Brown came in second. And that's just this modern bias, people who've only seen Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson, they're gonna always lean towards them being the greatest. But if you ever saw Bill Russell or Will Chamberlain or even Lou Hudson back in the old days, you wouldn't be so quick to label people as the greatest ever. So that's the Super Bowl. Hope you all had fun. Now today is Valentine's Day. I hope everyone recognizes that Valentines. Guys, we got special responsibility on this. And the interesting part about it, no, let me just say that the older I get, the less I'm into celebrating holidays, birthdays, any type of special celebration. But Valentine's is special, and make an exception for that because my wife of 37 years and I were married on Valentine's Day. And here's the picture. We got married at our fraternity's sweetheart banquets. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. As you can see, we did a little creative taping to indicate Kappa Alpha Psi, but that's me and my wife on our wedding night. We've been together 47 years, been married 37 years. And the young man there doing the Saturday Night Live dance floor kind of pose with his hands in the air, that's my oldest son, Darian. And then the young lady there is my neighbor and daughter of Coach Mackenzie. Many of you probably know him. She was the flower girl. Interesting thing about it, Darian is now a professor at UCLA, teaching writing and entrepreneurship. He got his master's at Brown University in theater. As a matter of fact, that's how he ended up out in Hollywood. And then Rashida, who you see there, she went on to play college basketball, and she's successful. She's an entrepreneur, married to a great young man, got a family started, living in the D.C. area. So I've just a lot of great memories there. But flash forward to the day. Me and my wife, we've been together for, like I say, 47 years, and we've just been doing fine. We're a little older, but I think my wife has, uh, she's just like fine wine. She just get better with age. I guess I got a little dad bod there, as they said about Patrick Mahomes. But we're in pretty good shape, and we're very happy and blessed that we've lived a great 37 years, 47 years together. So I encourage all of you out there. I'm just a big believer in family, and I'm a big believer in marriage. I'm a big believer in marrying the mother of your children, and so that's reflected of that. In fact, I think that's my proudest accomplishment in life. So, all of you out there, hug your sweetheart, do great things on Valentine's Day. Me and my wife are celebrating our 37th wedding anniversary today. So let's get into it a little bit here. I got a couple of videos to talk about. Today, I'm going to discuss some ideas from a black conservative named Jason Riley. Uh, Jason, well, we're going to start off with Adrian Dantley. Let me do Adrian Dantley. And what I like about this video, Adrian Dantley, for those of you who are too young to know, he led the NBA and scored quite a few times. uh, NBA All Star member of the Hall of Fame, made quite a bit of money. But what I like about this story, and we're going to show it here. Why don't? Oh, by the way, my studio technician here, a technical expertise. I call him Studio Matt Washington. I got a great team here. We got Sasha, we got Ava, we got Jim, we got Curtis, we got Joe. A lot of people behind helping me do this. Otherwise, I couldn't do it. And studio is my main man as far as technical production here in the studio. So uh, I always depend on him quite a bit. But we're going to show you this first video, and I'm going to come back and talk to you about it. It's Adrian Danley. Keep in mind, this guy is a former All Pro Hall of Famer, made good money while he was playing in the NBA. But look, I really admire what he's doing today. Let's go studio and share this with our audience, please.
Go across the street.
Few of these kids know they're high-fiving in that bright green jacket in a Silver Spring, Maryland crosswalk is an NBA Hall of Famer, an Olympic gold medalist, and a millionaire.
Why you want to be a crossing guard? It's not beneath me. You know, I'm a regular guy. I just played basketball. I'm a Hall of Famer. I'm a regular guy, and I like working.
58-year-old Adrian, who now uses a whistle, Danley draws the foul, heard plenty of whistles during his 15-year pro career. Danley, Washington, D.C. high school phenom, became an All-American at Notre Dame. During his pro days, the 6'5" Danley made north of $1 million a year. As a county crossing guard, less than 15 grand a year. But then for Danley, whose friends will tell you he is frugal and certainly has a net worth well into seven figures, this is not about the money.
Basically, I did it just to be around the kids.
Danley will try to break an 11-1. His NBA days as a player and coach have paid off. Look at this. He appears to be playing defense as he fends off cars on the street. And more than once, those long, sweeping arms have been lifesavers.
I definitely saved two kids' lives.
The job has meaning.
Oh, it definitely have meaning, and I feel like I'm doing something, helping the community, and it's all about the kids.
Danley says for the next 20 years,
I get him on more. You gotta wait. I can't do it now, okay?
you'll find him in the crosswalk. David Curley, ABC News, Silver Spring, Maryland.
So I love this story for a lot of different reasons. And keep in mind, I'm old school. And people tend to, when they think of history, they think of 100 years ago, but history is just the past. And this was what, 15, 20 years ago that I was a big fan of Adrian Danley. As a matter of fact, my youngest son, I have two children, two sons, Darian and Adrian. My youngest son is named Adrian. Now, my oldest son, I got his name from a sonnet I read it, I think in the 8th, 10th grade by John Keats. On first looking at Chapman's Homer, the last word in the sonnet is the last line in the sonnet is silent upon a peak in Darien. And I just love that line in that sonnet, and I just kept it in mind when my oldest son was born. I knew he was going to be a son. I knew I was going to name him Darien. And then my second son came along. I wanted something kind of similar, and I'm not going to get into how I came up with that middle name. But I wanted to name something simpler. So I thought of Adrian, and when I did it, I was thinking about Adrian Danley. Now, what I like about this, I just like the fact that Adrian Danley today, even though he's an NBA Hall of Famer, he got the money. He's just quiet. He's humble. He's hardworking. He sacrificed for others, and he's focused on helping children. And I just love that. Now, when you fast forward to today, they're making 50 million a year. They got mansions. They vacationing on the Riviera. They got a football sized garage with every kind of luxury car you can imagine in it. And really, it has become about more so seem like to me the money. And then, of course, there's the Instagram models, and I'm not going to get into all these athletes seem to have really the internet. The Instagram and internet has become like the singles bar of the world, which is a whole another issue. But to see someone who's dedicated, who's living a simple life, I just love what he's doing. Uh, you have to understand when I was growing up, basketball players, I think Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell, it was big news that they were making $100,000 a year. And it seems kind of funny, like I said, once again, looking at my high school career, people find it strange that the smart kids, the scholars, the academic kind of kids, were more popular than the athletes. So there was a time, at least in my life, when knowledge and classroom work and academics was more important than athletics. Now, I understand that if you're born poor and you're in these tough neighborhoods and you want to get your mom and your family out of these poor situations, that you focus on certain things like athletics to help with that. But really, I'd like to see us get back to the day where that balance is a little bit more even, where academics are just as important as athletics in our community. Uh, so, multimillionaire, living modestly. Hopefully, we can return to the days where we have a commitment to our community, a commitment to our children. Because to be honest with you, I think fundamentally, when you look at the root causes of a lot of things that's going on in our community, and when I say our community, I have to be specific the Black community, it's because we're not giving our children the priority that we should be giving them. And I tell everybody, people find it strange that I'm not a big chaser of money. And one of the reasons I'm not, because I had a great childhood. I tell people I had a perfect childhood and we didn't have that much money. So I don't associate joy and happiness to money. I associate joy and happiness to things like God and great parents and great grandfather and great grandparents and great teachers and having some guy 5 years older than I am in my community who's spending time with all the young guys in the community, teaching them how to build stuff and how to make volcanoes and things like that. And I just remember it's all about God and the people in our lives, and not so much as the money. Once again, going back to the Adrian Dantley story, where this former NBA player, rich guy, he's being a crosswalk person at one of the schools in Maryland, D.C. area. So once again, just looking at where we are today versus where we used to be, I'm not so sure we have advanced that much, and which leads me into our next gentleman. And like I said, I, I'm just purposefully uh, letting you hear from some Black conservatives. And these guys, the sad part about it, these guys are just so smart and intellectual, and they're knowledgeable, and they're sharing good wisdom. But I said the last time that if someone controls your knowledge and your information, they're really controlling the way you think. And regardless of what your IQ is, regardless of your education, you're only as knowledgeable as the information that you receive. And once I've always been a voracious reader. And if you're wondering how I came to the views that I've come to today, that's contrary to the mainstream media narratives and things, because I read a lot. And after, in the process of reading a lot, I got to the point very early in the process, and probably sometime second, third year in college, where I was realizing what they was not telling me. And once I realized what I was not being told in the mainstream media, in the classrooms, and what was not being said, I began to see a pattern to it. And once I saw a pattern to it, I saw the motivations. I saw who was behind it. I saw what the messages were. And it's a method to what they're doing. In fact, I probably mentioned the last time, long about this time too, I read the book on propaganda. I started studying propaganda and how it worked. And I could see exactly that the news media today, and it's sad, is mainly a propaganda cranking machine. I just don't. I just watch the news mainly to know what other people are going to be saying, and not necessarily to educate myself. So, having said that, uh, I am going to bring to you today a gentleman named uh, Jason Riley, and like I said, very few of you have heard of it. He's written a couple of books. Uh, One of them is called "Please Stop Helping Us: How Liberals Make It Harder for Blacks to Succeed." And once again, I just got to be straight with you. Disagree with me. I'm always willing to learn. I'm always willing to be proven wrong. But I think that is our main, one of our main problems. We've taken this liberal viewpoint of the world, and we've off on this victimhood type of trip. America is racist, and not that there aren't races in America, but that doesn't make America racist. That doesn't make this country racist. As I pointed out the last time, I'm just amazed the number of times me and my wife are out places and how people just getting along. Of all the diverse people are just having a good time. That's what it is for the most part. I'm not going to get into the mathematics of racism and 99 and how many white people in America, 99%. I'm not going to deal with that today. But just to say that I just believe that even though we do have racists in this country, that this is the best place for me and my family and what I can do for my family. So I'm taking a viewpoint. A couple other things before we bring on Jason here. The other book that he wrote was a book called False Black Power. I think that's what it's called, where he talks about we have equated power to politics. And what I've been saying all along, look, they can play these games all they want until we have financial justice in this country. Social justice is going to be almost impossible to obtain. And I've said this before. There's a lot of talk out there for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Once again, because I don't just follow the mainstream media narrative, I think there's a lot of it's just full of crap. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is one of those areas that I think is a lot of just full of crap. Because, and let me tell you why, I never talk about, and I mentioned this before in another podcast. There are, I think the last time I saw it, 770 uh, billionaires in the United States of America. And out of that number, I think the last I saw there was 4 or 5 billionaires. There's a few more been added. Kanye West, he goes up and down. But there's very few black billionaires. And this is what I'm getting at. Let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion among the billionaire class. That's what I want to talk about. Let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion among successful business owners, people who own successful global enterprises that's into technology, that's into investment, that has Wall Street firm. That's what I'm interested in. I've told this story before. Uh, what my company and me and my family and my wife do, we invest in black businesses, startup businesses. And I've always been looking for, and some people find the way I put this, they don't like it, a black Bill Gates or black Larry Page. Larry Page is one of the co-founders of Google. That's what I'm interested in. So I met this young software developer. He had a software development company. He was interested in me and my wife and other people investing in this startup. And when I met him, one of the first things he indicated to me, I'm going to build this business over the next 5 years. I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to take my money and go into social justice. And before I knew it, my immediate response was, look, we have enough people in social justice. We need someone to fight for us for financial justice. And that's what I like for you to think about. When you grow this company and make all your money, uh, find other entrepreneurs to take a risk. Now, here's the thing: the key thing about being entrepreneurs is you're taking a risk. And I tell every potential investors that I ever talk to, just remember you can lose it all. But once again, as I say, I've said many times before, I'm standing on the shoulder of the previous generation. And the men, and I stress men, from the previous generation, they risked their lives for me. My dad, my neighbors up and down the neighborhood, people I knew risked their lives. As a matter of fact, I had never missed a chance to point out that if you Google Warless Jackson, Wharlest, you will see that he was assassinated. I knew uh, for applying for holding a job that they thought was not for a black man. So I don't talk about this without some personal experience and personal pain. But I owe it to the next generation to risk some money to help these black startup businesses, and that's the way I look at it. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring in Jason Riley here. Jason was he's a conservative commentator and author. He was on the Wall Street Journal. He is, I think, still is, editorial board. He's a fellow at the Manhattan Institute. And what I like about this, and what I generally like about black conservatives, is that we do our analysis and we do our study. We gather data, and the lack of emotion. I think there's a lot of logic there. I got a lot of friends that are just very emotional about this, and I understand it. And a lot of times they don't understand me, but I'm about solving the problem. I'm not about feeling good and things like that. Let's solve the problem. And most conservatives have Jason's viewpoint. And basically, what he's talking about is how our political success has not led to social economic success. So let's get Jason started. I will pause as we go along here and make various comments. So, studio, why don't we queue up and get Jason?
Really prioritize the integration of political institutions with the goal of closing racial and economic gaps. And at least in terms of electing more blacks to office, they've had a good deal of success on this front. By the early 1980s, major U.S. cities with large black populations, Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia, and so forth, had elected black mayors, almost all of whom pushed for bigger government and for special treatment for blacks. Since 1970, the number of black elected officials has grown from fewer than 200 to more than 10,000, including, of course, a black president. The problem is that all this political clout never really paid off economically for the black poor, which is what we were told would happen. You look at how the black underclass fared in these black cities. Coleman Young's Detroit in the 1970s, was Newark, New Jersey in the 1990s. These black mayors created unfull political machines, helping the black poor more impoverished on their. In an era of increasing black political clout and affirmative action, the black underclass lost, both in absolute terms and relative to the white underclass. In the 1970s and 80s, and even into the 1990s, the poorest blacks in America saw their incomes decline at more than double the rate of the poorest whites in America. In the wake of the war on poverty, black labor force participation declined, black unemployment rates rose, and the black nuclear family disintegrated. Between the 1960s and the 1990s,
I wanted to stop there because he hit on a few key points. First of all, once again, welcome your feedback. Politics is not the answer. Our issue is not a political issue. He mentioned about the black family. The family is the most important unit, I think, in any civilization. And somehow we've gotten to today where the vast majority of our children are being born out of wedlock. Back before this war on poverty and all this liberal acceptance of all these liberal philosophies, uh, most of our kids were born in two-parent families. I want people to think about the family, and we're talking about finances and social economic also. The family is also a business unit. And with two people, you're automatically doubling your sources of income. And so that's good. And once again, probably at the bottom of it all is we've lost our spirituality, which I told you last time, according to the latest studies I've seen, 8 out of 10 black men have absolutely nothing to do with the church or any religious organization. Now, I'm not naive. I know a lot of people look at religion as the opiate for the masses, and they don't believe in a lot of it. And I'm saying whether you believe in the philosophy or not, what it brings is a certain set of moral principles that you live by. What it brings to you is always a sense of faith and hope. What it brings to you is a certain discipline. What it brings to you is setting goals. What it brings to you is strength, just to forge forward. It brings to you tenacity. It brings all of that. And to throw that, when you throw religion out, in a way, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And so I want people to understand that. He's talking about that. And what he's pointing out, and once again, I point this out before, you can go out and look at my very first posted on Facebook. I made this statement, and I thought it's just a logical statement. As long as black people are voting 85% Democrat, things are going to keep getting worse. And not that in and of itself is bad, but to me, it projects a certain mindset. And I hate to keep repeating myself, but my mindset from the beginning of my life, is ever since I can remember, is that I can be anything I want to be. Racism ain't gonna stop me. Ain't nothing gonna stop me. And that's kind of the way I was raised. And so when we start letting all these other ways of looking at things get in the way, or we're looking for somebody else to change and the world to change, it's not going to happen. Uh, and one thing I've turned to my wife and said, look, and what I've learned in life, what I think I've learned, if you want to change anything in your life, the first thing you got to change is yourself. And before you start going out talking about changing the world and getting, look at your own life and see what you have to change. So once again, let's bring Jason back. He's going to share a few more things, but the main point is economics.
The proportion of black children living with both parents fell from 2/3 to 1/3. The pre-1970 era shows that what's needed more than political saviors, racial preferences, wealth redistribution schemes, is economic growth and opportunity. Tight labor markets are more beneficial than affirmative action. Having a black man in the home is more important than having one in the White House. A few years ago,
That's a very important point I had. So having a black man in your home, and this is going to be a constant theme during this Black History Month, is more important than having a black man in the White House. Or the way I used to put it, who's bringing your son to the barber shop is more important than who's in the White House. And I'm in a situation, once again, old school. Women didn't come in the barber shop when I was growing up because the dad brought the young men to the barber shop. And one of the things, there's a couple things that disturb me a lot about the current barbershop culture. One of them is that most of the time I see the women bringing the boys to the barbershop. And that's symbolic to me. And I guess the second thing, now that I thought about it, is, when you go to the barbershop, you get these young guys, a lot of young guys, I call them young, some of them are old. They're constantly talking. And one of the things that hit me and that really saddened me is that a lot of these young men had some experience with the criminal justice system. They had been in jail, they had been in prison, and people, look, it just bothers me that it's just like a rite of passage for these guys. Uh, Jail and prison. Uh, my wife and I was talking about this once again, going back to my son Adrian. He played football in the football league here, and I should go over and watch him practice, and every once in a while I help out. But long story short, so these three young black kids come running up to me, two girls and a boy, and I'll never forget it. The little boy looks at me and he says, "Don't everybody have a record?" And these little kids arguing about prison and jail records and accepting the fact that everybody has it. And a lot of times and I need to stay focused here, but I gotta say this. Look, uh, what I tell people, one of the reasons a lot of these issues aren't getting solved is the people that's solving them don't know the community and the market that they're working with. They don't know the people. And if you know the people in these communities, you know a lot of the stuff they're talking to is counterproductive. A lot of this money that they're spending is counterproductive. You know that nobody's talking about root causes. You're dealing with politicians. Their objective is to get your vote. And if it has to just give you some money to make you feel good and the problem keep going on for decades, as long as that money is getting votes for them, that's what they're going to keep doing. And that's really what has been happening in the black community for the past, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 decades. They keep throwing money at these issues. And they got us convinced that money is the issue. And it's not. It's some fundamental things. Once again, spirituality, family, education, and prosperity through business ownership. Those are the things, but they keep got us distracted by these other things. So once again, uh, the father being in the home is very key, and whether we got a black man in the house is more important than having a black man in the White House. More from Jason Riley here.
I wrote a column on the prevalence of violent crime in poor black neighborhoods. And in the column, I used a quote from Martin Luther King, who once told a black congregation, "Do you know that Negroes are 10% of the population in St. Louis and responsible for 58% of the crimes?" King said, "We've got to face that. We've got to do something about our moral standards." He said, "We know that there are many things wrong in the white world, but there are many things wrong in the black world too. We keep blaming the white man. There are things we must do for ourselves." After the column ran, a number of readers contacted the paper and accused me of making up a quote, which comes from a 1961 Harper's Magazine profile of King by James Baldwin. And some readers apparently just didn't believe that the nation's most prominent civil rights leaders used to speak this way about problems in the black community and the role of personal responsibility. I'm not arguing that blacks should disengage politically. My point is that political power and political clout does not automatically lead to upward mobility for a group. And
Yeah, once again, uh, in private, a lot of this politics, I use the word scam. Uh, I really believe we as black voters are being scammed. And it's a simple scam. Keep us focused on race and racism and not on policies and results. Look, you can come and try. There is no one out there who can convince me that with all the money that we've been pouring into these communities, that we cannot solve these issues that's been going on for decades. If our goal is to solve the issues, and I was going to talk about this earlier, my background is technical. We built computers and I don't know, for all kinds of reasons, fly out, jet fighters, control torpedoes, air reconnaissance system. My point of it is that I'm used to what we call the scientific methodology to problem solving, where you really analyze the problem, you gather data, you gather as much information as possible, and objectively look at it and come up with a proposed solution. And even with the proposed solution, you're constantly doubting yourself whether it's right, and you're constantly testing and verifying that you're right as you go along. And what you find out a lot of times you're wrong. Problem I have with a lot of things that's going on today, everybody say they got the answer. I should say everybody. A lot of people say they have the answer, and you can't question things. We've gotten to the point as a country and as a society, and this is going to come back to bite us sooner or later if not already, where we are canceling and censoring people who we think don't agree with what we're saying and what our solution is and our perspective of the issue. In fact, the exact opposite should be happening. I tell everybody, I'm not going to get into this here. Albert Einstein, one of the most renowned physicists, we'll get into that sometime too. He was wrong about some basic points of physics. This is after he came up with the general theory of relativity. He was wrong about some basic things in physics. He was supposed to be the expert. In fact, it has to do with quantum physics, and not going to spend much time on quantum physics here today. But when you learn about things like entrapment, when you learn about things like entanglement in physics, you're not so sure that, well, those of you who doubt that there is a God, you might want to think twice about it. And this be above and beyond reading things from Stephen Hawking, the great astrophysicist who wrote the book A Brief History of Time. And I've said this before, somewhere he gets into discussing the formation of the universe, and one of the most renowned astrophysicists of our times says, there's no way to explain this except for God must have done it. And so my point is that the spirituality that this guy is talking about, the things that he's talking about, we are missing a lot of our spirituality, and we've lost sight of what's really important. And we're counting on politics, and politics really is not the answer. And just let me say this before I bring him back on. What I've been telling people, the key is finance. And listen, what you want are politicians coming to you for your support before they get in office. See, right now, basically, as far as financial support, basically they just ignore the black community. Every election, they remind us of race and racism. They get our vote automatically. And then we go to them and say, you got our votes, do something for us. Well, what a lot of times we don't seem to understand is that more important than the support after they get in office is the support before they get in office, because really they're working for the people who gave them money before they got into office. And those people will always take top priority. And what I'm trying to say, we need, once again, black, rich entrepreneurs, successful, where these politicians are coming to our community to get our support, financial and otherwise, before they get in office. And when they get in office, they owe us for our support. And look, they figured the formula out a long time ago. The candidate with the most money almost always win. And so think about that. It's the money that drives the system, not your vote. Let's continue, studio.
And that's a case that's been proven not just with Black history, but with the history of many other groups who rose economically first and engaged in politics later. And that has been the more typical pattern for a group rising, a minority group, rising from poverty to prosperity. So Blacks' political success is not something that that has automatically translated into economic success, and yet that is what the civil rights leadership has been focused on primarily since 1965. The thinking was that we got the Voting Rights Act passed, and if we can just get more of our own in office, the rest will take care of itself. And I went through that history of Black mayors and poverty rates to show that the rest is not taking care of itself.
You mentioned focusing on political power. Once again, in a capitalist society, don't ever underestimate the importance of financial success and financial power. I think that's what we need to be concentrating on. That's what I want us to concentrate on. Once again, we got a lot of people out there fighting for social justice. A couple of other things, not just financial justice, political justice. And I pointed this out before. Look, we are the swing votes. And I say we, the black community, in a lot of these elections. We should be able to leverage that to get what we need to make our community better. Now, here's the thing. Well, first of all, uh, a lot of times when we're going to the polls, to me, it's like we're going to the grocery store without a grocery list or going shopping without a shopping list. And if you go shopping without a shopping list, I don't know about you, but I'm going to come back with a lot of things I never intended to buy. I'm going to come back with the things that hit me first and the for sale signs and everything. And to apply that to politics, they have figured out the way you get the black vote is to talk about race and racism. You win us over on that, all the other issues and policy goes out the window. And I know I have, because you can imagine I got a lot of liberal friends and family members. And I know they push back on it, but I welcome anybody to come on my podcast and push back on it. Let's have a dialogue about it. Because I think we just got these crazy ideas. Well, I shouldn't call them crazy. I got to be respectful here. We got these strange ideas about what's really the problems and issues are. And we need our own list. We need to sit down and look at our community. And like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and all of said, we need to look in the mirror. It's not what the world is doing. It's not what white folks are doing. It's not American history. It's the things that we have control over that we are just making a lot of bad choices and decisions. And so that's what I want. And that's what I want to come out of listening to a lot of these conservative black voices, because they have a totally different perspective on it. And if you haven't figured that out yet, I think they have a better perspective on it. I pointed out last time that in my public school education, there was almost strictly focused on us learning, reading, writing, arithmetic, science, history, learning. It was none of this, we're descendants of slaves and look how they treated our grandparents. It's like you can be anything you want to be. Don't pay attention to that. You better learn this. And I pointed out that I had only not been hired after a job interview one time in my life. Every other time I got a job offer because I didn't go in there thinking the guy was racist. He wouldn't hire me because I'm black and all that stuff. I just went in there thinking, I know what I'm doing. I'm the best in the world at this, and they're going to recognize and hire me. And I stress of focusing on being the best we can be. So having said that, I'm going to wrap this up a little. We talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We talked about going shopping without a shopping list. People, look, let's analyze things for ourselves. Let's stop letting the mainstream media determine what we focus on. A lot of times I think it's like we're lost in the wilderness sometimes as a people. It's like we're in this dark room searching for answers. And the only place we search is where our enemies shine the flashlight. You're only looking where they're shining the flashlight. We need to open up our minds, get our own flashlights, use our own minds to start analyzing these issues for ourselves, independent of what people are saying. And I guess I'm going to end it with this. But before I end it, though, Thomas Sowell, you never hear from this brother. He is one of the most brilliant black minds out there. But guess what? He says the wrong things, quote unquote. He talks about the history of slavery. He talks about us looking at ourselves as victims. He talks about the game, scam, or whatever being run on us. And so I'm saving him for last. I just really enjoy this young man. In fact, interesting thing about Dr. Soul, he was a Marxist at one time. And like me, as he learned more and thought more for himself, he came up with a totally different perspective on things. A lot of this boiled down to focusing on group ID and race, like I said, I have friends who are on the other side of the spectrum, politically and otherwise. One of them sent me an article uh, yesterday talking about how some of the black conservatives were criticizing the singing of the black national anthem. And once again, I try to be logical. I try to be consistent. I try to live by the principles of Jesus' teaching, the principles of the Constitution, and the principle that my parents and elders taught me. And my thing is, once again, going wrapping it up, going back to Morgan Freeman. Look, how do we expect to end racism by constantly talking about it? I don't get that. It's illogical to me. It's non-spiritual to me. So I want somebody to answer that question for me. And once again, we talked about ownership. Uh, Look, what I'm interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion is how many black NFL owners of teams do we have? Those are the type of things that says to me that we're serious about sharing. Now, I'm in this. I'm not in favor of giving anybody anything for free. I get in trouble for this. I'm not in favor of lowering any bars to help us achieve. I'm not in favor of a different set of standards. I want to achieve, and I'll use an athletic analogy. I'm gonna beat you with your own rules. You can make up the rules. I'm still gonna beat you, and that's the way I feel about where we are today. And I'm just reminded, and I want all you to remember this for Black History Month. Look, I do a lot of digging into a lot of ancient artifacts, statues, and things where people can't explain how people did it, whether it's the pyramid. I mean, there are uh, caves in China where they're trying to figure out how did these people achieve these things thousands of years ago. Uh, Interesting part about it, most of these uh, structures and artifacts that they can't figure out how people made them back in those days because of their precision, their scientific precision, and how they fits into everything and the physics of it all. The interesting thing about it, and once again, I'm not saying this to separate people, is that it happens. Most of them are in countries where people of color live, and I want people to understand that the first people on this earth were were in Africa. They're African descent. Every living person on this earth descended from a black person. And so I don't think we have anything to prove. I think we have it in and we've proven we can be scientific in everything. Let's just remember that when people try to convince us that we are victims and try to convince us to focus on race, which once again, genetic science tell us there's no such thing as race. Uh, Genetic science and the mapping of the human genome tells us that there's more differences within races than among races. What we need to do is know who we are, control our knowledge and information. We need to understand that a lot of stuff that they're telling us and feeding us and that we're seeing is basically to prepare us to get in line and get in the job market and work for other people. It's not intended to make us knowledgeable, free thinking people who can solve our own problems, who know that we are empowered to make a difference in our own life. So I'm going to end it there, reminding you of Thomas Sowell coming up, reminding you to go out and comment, subscribe, like this podcast, go out to the online store. And once again, hope y'all had a happy Valentine's Day. Hug and kiss your loved ones, your family, and we'll see you again here next week. This is Lacy Johnson signing off. Thanks.